Some stories begin with fortune, but this one begins with a scream. A quiet veteran rebuilding his life, a billionaire running from shadows she couldn't see, and a terrified young girl whose desperate cry would shatter the silence of an ordinary afternoon. None of them knew that one chaotic moment would unlock a past buried deep, activate skills long dormant, and bind three broken souls together in ways that would defy logic, fate, and fear itself. And when that piercing scream echoed through the parking lot, "They took my mom," nothing this single father believed about second chances, buried identities, or the life he'd carefully constructed would ever be the same. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Thornhill Commons, a modest shopping plaza on the quieter side of Westbrook. For Easton Brooks, this was just another Thursday. Another shift at Morrison's Hardware ending at 3:30 p.m. Another school pickup at 4 p.m. Another evening of homework help and microwave dinners with his son. Easton didn't mind the routine. In fact, he'd built his entire life around it. Predictable, controlled, safe. He locked the employee entrance behind him, adjusting the strap of his worn canvas backpack. At 38, Easton carried himself with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd learned to waste neither movement nor words. Tall, lean, with close-cropped dark hair going gray at the temples, he had the kind of face people rarely remembered, which was exactly how he preferred it. His old Chevy Tahoe sat 3 rows back, baking in the September heat. Easton clicked the key fob and heard the familiar chirp. He was halfway there when his phone buzzed. A text from his son's school. "Early dismissal today due to AC failure. Pick up by 2:45 p.m. Easton checked his watch. 2:52 p.m. He cursed under his breath, quickening his pace. Bennett would be waiting at the office, probably anxious, definitely annoyed that his dad was late again. Easton had almost reached his vehicle when he heard it. A scream. Not playful, not theatrical. The kind of scream that came from genuine terror. "They took my mom! Somebody help! They took my mom!" Every instinct Easton had spent 5 years suppressing roared back to life in an instant. His body shifted before his mind caught up. Shoulders squared, vision sharpened, heart rate steady. He turned toward the sound. Near the far end of the lot, by the entrance to Bellamy's Cafe, a young girl, maybe 9 or 10, stood frozen beside a black Mercedes SUV. The driver's door hung open. A half-spilled iced coffee pooled on the asphalt. The girl's face was streaked with tears, her voice cracking as she screamed again. "Please, somebody, they took her." Easton's feet moved. He crossed the lot in seconds, scanning the area with trained precision. No suspicious vehicles fleeing, no obvious signs of struggle beyond the open door and the abandoned coffee. A few shoppers had stopped to stare, but no one approached. Easton knelt in front of the girl, keeping his voice calm and low. "Hey, I'm Easton. I'm going to help you. What's your name?" The girl's tear-filled eyes locked onto his. "Sophie," she choked out. "My name is Sophie." "Okay, Sophie, you're safe right now. I need you to tell me what happened. Can you do that?" Sophie nodded, trembling. "We just came out of the cafe. Mom was putting her coffee in the cup holder, and then this van pulled up fast. 2 men got out. They grabbed her and pulled her inside. She screamed my name, but they drove away." Easton kept his expression neutral, but his mind was already processing. Targeted abduction. Coordinated. Professional. What kind of van? White. Didn't have windows in the back. Did you see which way it went? Sophie pointed toward the main road. That way. toward the highway. Easton pulled out his phone and dialed 911, keeping his tone steady as he reported the incident. The dispatcher promised units were en route. He turned back to Sophie. "The police are coming. You did exactly the right thing by calling for help." Sophie wiped her eyes with shaking hands. Why would someone take my mom? Easton didn't answer immediately. He'd seen enough in his former life to know that people got taken for all kinds of reasons: ransom, revenge, leverage. And if this was as professional as it seemed, there was a reason behind it. "I don't know yet," Easton said gently. "But we're going to find out. Do you have family I can call? Your dad? Grandparents?" Sophie's face crumpled. "My dad died 3 years ago. It's just me and Mom." Easton's chest tightened. He knew that feeling, the weight of being all someone had left. "What's your mom's name?" "Lily. Lily Daniels." The name meant nothing to Easton, but the car, the cafe, the designer purse still sitting on the passenger seat, all pointed to money. Serious money. Sirens wailed in the distance. Easton stayed with Sophie, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. She was shaking less now, but her breathing was still uneven. He recognized trauma when he saw it, the kind that didn't fade quickly. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot, lights flashing. Officers stepped out, and Easton stood, gently guiding Sophie forward. "She witnessed an abduction," Easton said immediately. "White van, no rear windows, 2 male suspects. Headed east toward Route 9, approximately 8 minutes ago." One of the officers, a stocky man with graying sideburns, sized Easton up. "You see it happen?" "No. I responded when she called for help." The officer nodded, then crouched to Sophie's level. "Sweetheart, can you tell me what happened?" Sophie repeated the story, her voice stronger this time. Easton watched the officers exchange glances. This wasn't a typical case, and they knew it. A detective arrived within minutes, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s named Inspector Vega. She took control quickly, organizing a perimeter search and putting out an APB on the van. Vega turned to Easton. "You the first responder?" "Civilian. I work at the hardware store across the lot. Heard her scream." Vega studied him for a beat longer than necessary. Easton knew that look. Cops had a way of sensing when someone had training. "You stay with her the whole time?" "Yes, ma'am." Vega nodded. "We'll need a statement. But first, I need to contact next of kin for the girl." Sophie spoke up, voice small but clear. "There's no one else, just my mom." Vega's expression softened. "What about aunts, uncles, family friends?" Sophie shook her head. "We moved here 6 months ago. We don't really know anyone yet." Easton felt something twist in his gut. A young girl, alone, terrified. No one to call. Vega sighed, pulling out her phone. "I'll contact Child Protective Services." "No!" Sophie's voice cracked with panic. "Please, I don't want to go with strangers. I just want my mom back." Easton stepped forward without thinking. "Inspector, if you need someone to stay with her temporarily while you coordinate, I can help. I have a son her age. I can take her to my place until you figure out next steps." Vega's eyes narrowed. "You have a record, Mr. Brooks?" "Honorably discharged veteran. Clean background. I can provide references." Vega considered for a long moment, then glanced at Sophie, who was looking at Easton like he was the only stable thing in a collapsing world. "I'll need to run your information first," Vega said. "But if it checks out, I'll allow it temporarily. This is highly irregular." "I understand." 15 minutes later, Vega's phone buzzed. She read the screen, then looked at Easton with a new expression. Respect. You didn't mention you were special forces. Easton's jaw tightened. Didn't seem relevant. Vega handed him a card. It's relevant now. Keep her safe. I'll be in touch within the hour. Easton nodded, then turned to Sophie. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe. Sophie hesitated, then took his hand. As they walked toward his Tahoe, Easton realized the quiet life he'd built was about to shatter. And for the first time in 5 years, he wasn't sure if that was a bad thing. The drive to Bennett's school was silent, except for the hum of the engine and Sophie's occasional sniffling from the back seat. Easton kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was moving at triple speed, running through scenarios, probabilities, and threat assessments he thought he'd left behind. Professional abduction, daylight, public location, no witnesses intervening. This wasn't random. He pulled into the school parking lot at 3:18 p.m. Bennett was waiting on the front steps, arms crossed, backpack slung over one shoulder. His sandy brown hair stuck up in the back, and his expression was somewhere between annoyed and relieved. Easton stepped out. Hey, bud. Sorry I'm late. Bennett walked over, then stopped when he noticed Sophie in the back seat. His eyes widened. Dad? Who's that? Her name is Sophie. She's going to stay with us for a little while. Bennett blinked. Like a sleepover? Something like that. Bennett climbed into the passenger seat, twisting around to look at Sophie. I'm Bennett. Why are you crying? Sophie wiped her eyes quickly. I'm not. You totally are. Bennett, Easton said quietly. Give her some space. Bennett faced forward, but Easton could see the questions forming. His son was perceptive, sometimes too much so. They drove home in thick silence. Easton lived in a small 2-bedroom house on Oakmont Street, a modest neighborhood with chain-link fences and cracked driveways. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. He pulled into the narrow driveway and killed the engine. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Inside, the house smelled faintly of yesterday's spaghetti and the lavender air freshener Bennett insisted on buying. Easton dropped his keys on the kitchen counter and turned to Sophie. You hungry? Sophie shook her head. Thirsty? Another shake. Easton nodded. Okay, you can sit wherever you're comfortable. Bathroom's down the hall if you need it. Sophie moved to the couch and sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes darted around the room, taking everything in, but trusting nothing. Bennett hovered nearby, clearly unsure what to do. Easton pulled him aside, lowering his voice. Sophie's mom was taken. She doesn't have anyone else right now, so she's staying with us until the police sort things out. Bennett's face went pale. Taken? Like kidnapped? Yes. That's insane. I know. Bennett glanced at Sophie, then back at his dad. Is she okay? No, but she will be. Bennett nodded slowly, the weight of the situation settling on his 12-year-old shoulders. What do we do? We make her feel safe. Bennett straightened a little, like he'd been given an important mission. He walked over to Sophie and sat on the floor in front of the couch, not too close, just near enough. Hey, he said gently. I know this probably sucks, but my dad's really good at helping people. He used to be in the military and stuff, so you're in good hands. Sophie looked at him, her expression softening just a fraction. You think so? Yeah. He's kind of a superhero, but he doesn't like to talk about it. Easton felt something tighten in his chest. He turned away, busying himself with filling a glass of water. His phone buzzed. Inspector Vega. He stepped into the kitchen and answered. Brooks. We have a preliminary ID on the van, registered to a shell company. No useful leads yet, but we're working it. Any ransom demands? Not yet. But given who Lily Daniels is, we're expecting one. Easton frowned. Who is she? There was a pause. You really don't know? No. Vega exhaled. Lily Daniels is the CEO of Daniels Global Investments, worth somewhere north of $4 billion. She keeps a low profile, but she's one of the wealthiest women in the state. Easton processed that. Billionaire, single mother, just moved to the area. That explained the professional nature of the abduction. Any enemies? Easton asked. She's in finance, probably dozens. We're running down leads, but it'll take time. What about Sophie? Child services is overloaded. I pulled some strings to keep her with you temporarily. But I need you to understand something, Mr. Brooks. If this is a ransom situation, Sophie could become a secondary target. Easton's grip tightened on the phone. Understood. Keep your doors locked. Stay alert. I'll check in tomorrow morning. Copy that. The line went dead. Easton stood in the kitchen for a moment, staring at the counter. He'd walked away from this life, from the constant vigilance, from the threat assessments and contingency plans. But here it was, standing in his living room in the form of a terrified young girl who had no one else. He returned to the living room. Bennett had convinced Sophie to drink some water, and she was cradling the glass in both hands like it was something precious. Sophie, Easton said gently, I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? She nodded. Did your mom mention anyone following her? Anyone acting strange lately? Sophie thought for a moment. There was a man at the cafe last week. He kept staring at us. Mom noticed and moved us to a different table. What did he look like? Tall, dark hair. He wore sunglasses inside. Easton filed that away. Anything else? Phone calls? Visitors? Mom's been on the phone a lot. She sounded worried, but she didn't tell me why. Did she ever mention someone named? Easton stopped. He didn't have names yet. Never mind. You're doing great. Sophie's eyes filled with tears again. Do you think she's okay? Easton knelt in front of her, meeting her gaze. I think your mom is strong, and I think whoever took her wants something from her, which means they'll keep her safe until they get it. The police are working hard to find her. And you? Sophie whispered. Will you help find her too? Easton hesitated. He'd promised himself he was done. Done with the violence, done with the missions, done with being the person people called when things went bad. But looking at Sophie, seeing the desperate hope in her eyes, he felt something shift. Yeah, he said quietly. I'll help. Bennett grinned. Told you, superhero. Sophie managed a small, fragile smile. Later that evening, after a quiet dinner of grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, Easton set Sophie up in Bennett's room. Bennett insisted on taking the couch, claiming it was way more comfortable anyway. Easton tucked Sophie in, the unfamiliar gesture feeling strange but necessary. Thank you, Sophie whispered, for not making me go with strangers. You're safe. Here, Easton said. I promise. Sophie's eyes searched his face. Do you always keep your promises? Easton thought of the promises he'd made and broken over the years. To his wife before she died. To himself when he left the service. But this one felt different. Always, he said. Sophie nodded and closed her eyes. Easton stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. His phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. We know who you are, Brooks. Stay out of this. Easton stared at the message, his jaw tightening. They'd made a mistake, Threatening him was one thing. But threatening a young girl under his protection, that was something else entirely. He deleted the message and walked to his bedroom closet. Behind a stack of old boots and forgotten jackets was a locked metal case. Easton hadn't opened it in 5 years. Tonight, that changed. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Easton's living room, painting soft gold across the worn furniture. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old floorboards settling. Easton had been awake since 4:47 a.m. Old habits. He sat at the kitchen table, a mug of black coffee cooling in his hands, staring at the contents of the metal case he'd retrieved the night before. A sat phone, encrypted hard drive, 3 passports under different names, and a single Glock 19, field-stripped and meticulously maintained despite years of disuse. He told himself he'd never touch these things again. But the text message changed everything. Footsteps padded softly down the hallway. Easton quickly closed the case and slid it under the table as Sophie appeared in the doorway, her hair tangled from sleep, wearing one of Bennett's oversized t-shirts. "Morning," Easton said gently. "You sleep okay?" Sophie shrugged. "Not really." "Understandable." He stood and moved to the stove. "How about some breakfast? I make pretty decent pancakes." "Okay." Sophie sat at the table, pulling her knees up to her chest. She looked small, fragile, like someone trying to take up as little space as possible in a world that suddenly felt too big. Easton mixed batter in silence, the rhythmic whisking oddly calming. He'd learned to cook after his wife died, out of necessity more than desire. Bennett needed to eat, and fast food could only carry them so far. "My mom makes terrible pancakes," Sophie said quietly. Easton smiled. "Yeah? What's wrong with them?" "She always burns them on one side and leaves them raw in the middle, but she tries really hard. Trying counts for a lot." Sophie watched him pour batter onto the griddle. "You're really good at this." "Practice. I've made a lot of pancakes over the years." "For your son?" "Yeah. Bennett's pretty much lived on them since he was 7. Sophie was quiet for a moment. "What happened to his mom?" Easton flipped a pancake, his expression carefully neutral. "She got sick. Cancer. She passed away when Bennett was 6. "I'm sorry." "Me too." "Is that why you helped me yesterday? Because you know what it's like?" Easton plated the first batch and set it in front of her. "Maybe. Or maybe I just couldn't walk away from someone who needed help." Sophie picked up her fork, staring at the pancakes. "My dad died in a car accident. I was 7. I don't remember him that well anymore, and that makes me feel bad." Easton sat across from her. "You were young. That's not your fault. Mom says he was funny. She says I laugh like him. Then he's still with you, in the ways that matter." Sophie took a small bite, chewing slowly, then another. By the third bite, she was eating normally, the hunger finally overriding the fear. Bennett stumbled into the kitchen moments later, hair sticking in every direction, rubbing his eyes. "Are those pancakes?" "Sit down before they get cold," Easton said. Bennett dropped into a chair and immediately started stacking pancakes onto his plate. He glanced at Sophie. "You doing okay?" Sophie nodded. "Your dad makes really good pancakes, right? He acts like it's no big deal, but they're actually amazing." Easton shook his head, pouring more batter. "You two are easily impressed." "False," Bennett said through a mouthful. "I have very high pancake standards." Sophie smiled. It was small, fleeting, but real. Easton felt something loosen in his chest. After breakfast, Bennett offered to show Sophie his collection of graphic novels. They're mostly superheroes and weird sci-fi stuff, but some of them are cool. Sophie followed him hesitantly to his room, and soon Easton could hear Bennett's animated voice explaining plot lines and character arcs. Easton cleaned the kitchen, listening to the faint sound of Bennett making Sophie laugh. It was a good sound, a normal sound. His phone rang. Inspector Vega. Brooks, we got a ransom call this morning. $2 million. Drop location to be determined. They gave us 48 hours. Voice analysis? Clean. Professional. These guys know what they're doing. Easton leaned against the counter. What's your play? Standard protocol. Trace, negotiate, coordinate with the FBI. But Brooks, I'm going to be honest with you. Recovery rate on cases like this is 50-50 at best. Not good enough. I know. That's why I'm calling. You still have contacts from your old life? Easton's jaw tightened. Maybe. Maybe use them. Quietly. I can't officially sanction anything. But if you can get intel the Bureau can't, I won't ask questions. Understood. Vega paused. How's the girl? Holding up. She's tougher than she looks. Good. Keep her close. And Brooks, watch your back. These people sent you a warning for a reason. The line went dead. Easton set the phone down and stared out the window. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Kids riding bikes. A man mowing his lawn. Ordinary life continuing while Lily Daniels sat somewhere in the dark, waiting for rescue. He thought about the sat phone in the case. The numbers he could call. People who operated in shadows, who solved problems governments couldn't acknowledge. But calling them meant stepping back into a world he'd fought hard to leave. Dad? Easton turned. Bennett stood in the doorway. Sophie wants to know if we have any of Mom's old clothes. The shirt I gave her is kind of huge. Easton's throat tightened. His wife's things were still boxed in the attic. He'd never had the heart to get rid of them. Yeah, I'll find something. 20 minutes later, Sophie emerged wearing a soft blue sweater that had belonged to Easton's wife, Emily. It was still too big, but it fit better than Bennett's shirt. Thank you, Sophie said quietly. It's really soft. You can keep it, Easton said. Sophie touched the fabric gently. Are you sure? I'm sure. She looked up at him with those big, searching eyes. Why are you being so nice to me? Easton crouched to her level. Because you deserve kindness, especially right now. Sophie's lip trembled. I miss my mom. I know you do. What if they hurt her? Easton put a steady hand on her shoulder. Your mom is strong, and she's fighting to get back to you. I promise you that. Sophie nodded, wiping her eyes. Bennett appeared with a worn deck of cards. Want to learn poker? Not real poker, but like the fun kind where nobody loses actual money. Sophie managed a small smile. Okay. As Bennett dealt cards on the living room floor, explaining rules with exaggerated seriousness, Easton watched from the kitchen. This was what sanctuary looked like. Not fortified walls or armed guards, just two kids playing cards while the world spun chaos outside. And for now, that was enough. But Easton knew the storm was coming, and when it did, he'd be ready. The call came at 2:17 p.m. Easton was in the garage, checking the perimeter locks for the third time that day, when his phone vibrated. Inspector Vega's name flashed on the screen. Brooks. Vega's voice was tight. We have a problem. Easton stepped outside, closing the garage door behind him. Talk to me. The ransom call? It wasn't about money. Easton's pulse quickened. Explain. They want access codes. Daniels Global Investments handles portfolios for some very powerful people. Politicians, foreign nationals, people who don't want their assets traced. Whoever took Lily Daniels wants the encryption keys to those accounts. How much are we talking? Conservative estimate, north of $20 billion. Easton whistled low. So this isn't a ransom. It's corporate espionage. Worse, if those codes get out, it's not just money. It's leverage. Blackmail material on half the eastern seaboard. What did they say happens if she doesn't comply? Vega was quiet for a beat too long. They sent proof of life and a message. What kind of message? I'm sending you a photo. Brace yourself. Easton's phone buzzed. He opened the image and felt ice flood his veins. Lily Daniels sat in a metal chair, hands zip-tied behind her back, a gag across her mouth. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen. But it was the sign held in front of her that made Easton's jaw clench. 48 hours or the girl is next. Easton's grip tightened on the phone. They threatened Sophie directly. Yes, and that changes everything. We're moving her to a safe house within the hour. No. Brooks, this isn't negotiable. You move her now, and they'll know. They're watching. They have to be. The second Sophie leaves this house, she becomes a moving target. Vega exhaled sharply. Then what do you suggest? I keep her here. I secure the perimeter, and you let me do what I do best. Which is? Find them first. There was a long pause. You're talking about going off book. I'm talking about saving a woman's life and keeping a young girl safe. However that needs to happen. Vega Gulmus was silent. Then, I didn't hear that. But Brooks, if you're going to move fast. The clock's ticking. Understood. The line went dead. Easton stood in the driveway, staring at the photo. Lily Daniels looked terrified, but defiant. Even beaten and bound, there was steel in her eyes. The same steel he'd seen in Sophie. He deleted the image and walked back inside. Bennett and Sophie were still on the living room floor, surrounded by cards and scattered poker chips made from buttons. They looked up when he entered. Everything okay, Dad? Bennett asked. Yeah, just police business. Sophie studied his face. You're lying. Easton stopped. What? You do this thing with your jaw when you're worried. It gets really tight. Bennett blinked. She's right. You totally do that. Easton exhaled, realizing he couldn't hide this from her. She deserved the truth, or at least part of it. He sat on the arm of the couch. Sophie, the police got a message from the people who took your mom. Sophie's face went pale. Is she okay? She's alive. But they're demanding something from her, and it's complicated. What do they want? Easton chose his words carefully. Information. Your mom's company handles very sensitive accounts. These people want access. Sophie's hands clenched. Will she give it to them? I don't know. But what I do know is that we're going to get her back. How? Easton met her eyes. By being smarter than they are. Sophie stood abruptly, her voice cracking. You keep saying she's going to be okay. But you don't know that. You don't know anything. Sophie. My dad died and everyone said he'd be fine. My mom said we'd always be together, and now she's gone. Everyone keeps promising things they can't control. Her voice broke completely, tears streaming down her face. What if she doesn't come back? What if I'm alone forever? The raw anguish in her voice cut through the room like a blade. Easton stood and moved toward her slowly. Sophie, listen to me. No. She backed away. You can't promise anything. Nobody can. You're right, Easton said quietly. I can't promise your mom will come home. I can't promise this will end the way we want. But I can promise you this. I will fight like hell to bring her back. And no matter what happens, you won't be alone. Not while I'm here." Sophie stared at him, her small body trembling with grief and fear. Then, like a dam breaking, she collapsed forward. Easton caught her, wrapping his arms around her as she sobbed into his chest. He held her gently but firmly, the way he used to hold Bennett after Emily died, when the weight of loss felt too heavy for such small shoulders. "I've got you," Easton murmured. "I've got you." Bennett sat frozen on the floor, his own eyes glistening. Sophie cried until there was nothing left, until her breathing evened and exhaustion pulled her into a fragile calm. She didn't let go. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. But being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you love her." Sophie pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "Do you really think you can find her?" Easton wiped a tear from her cheek. "I'm going to try everything I can." She nodded, and for the first time since the abduction, something like trust settled in her eyes. Not blind hope, but belief. Belief that this man, this stranger who opened his home, meant what he said. Later that evening, after Sophie finally fell asleep on the couch, Bennett helped his father move furniture to barricade the front door. "Dad," Bennett said quietly, "are we in danger?" Easton paused. "Potentially." "So what do? We stay alert, we stay together, and we trust that I know how to handle this." Bennett nodded. "You're going to go after them, aren't you?" Easton looked at his son, 12 years old and already too perceptive. "If I have to." "Will you come back?" The question hit harder than Easton expected. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'll always come back to you." Bennett hugged him suddenly, fierce and tight. "You better." Easton held his son, feeling the weight of every decision pressing down. He'd walked away from the life of violence, from the missions and the blood, to give Bennett something better. But now that life had found him again, and this time he couldn't walk away. Because somewhere in the dark, a woman was fighting to survive. And in his living room, a young girl was counting on him to bring her mother home. Easton had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. The next morning arrived with overcast skies and a heavy stillness that seemed to press against the windows. Easton woke at dawn, the habit of years embedded too deep to break. He moved through the house quietly, checking locks, scanning the street through the blinds, cataloging every parked car and early morning jogger. Nothing out of place. But that didn't mean they weren't watching. He made coffee and stood at the kitchen window, watching light slowly bleed into the gray sky. The metal case sat on the table behind him, still locked but present, a reminder of who he used to be. Footsteps creaked on the stairs. Sophie appeared, wrapped in the blue sweater, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. "You're up early," Easton said. "Couldn't sleep." "Nightmares?" She nodded. Easton poured a glass of orange juice and slid it across the counter. "Want to talk about it?" Sophie climbed onto a stool. I kept seeing her face, the way she looked when they grabbed her. She was so scared. Easton leaned against the counter. "Your mom's tougher than you think." "How do you know?" "Because she raised you, and you're one of the toughest people I've met." Sophie looked down at her juice. "I don't feel tough." Tough isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you are. She considered that, tracing the rim of her glass with one finger. "Is that what you did when you were in the service?" Easton nodded slowly. "Every day." "Did you ever get scared?" "All the time." Sophie looked up, surprised. Really? Really. Fear keeps you sharp. It's only dangerous if you let it control you. She took a sip of juice. Mom never talks about being scared. She always acts like everything's fine, even when it's not. Sounds like someone else I know. Sophie managed a small smile. Yeah, I guess. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Can I ask you something? Sophie said. Sure. What was your wife like? Easton inhaled slowly. He didn't talk about Emily often. It still hurt in ways that time hadn't dulled. She was kind, he said finally. The kind of person who noticed when people were struggling and went out of her way to help. She laughed a lot, made terrible jokes. He smiled faintly. She was the best person I ever knew. Do you miss her? Every day. Sophie's expression softened. Mom says missing people means they mattered. Your mom's right. I miss my dad, but I barely remember him anymore. Does that make me a bad person? Easton shook his head firmly. Not even a little. You were young. Memory works differently for everyone. But the love doesn't go away, even when the details fade. Sophie nodded, something easing in her posture. Thanks. For what? For not treating me like I'm fragile. Everyone always does that. You're not fragile, Easton said. You're just carrying something heavy. There's a difference. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Bennett appeared, hair wild, still in his pajamas. Is there breakfast? He asked hopefully. Depends. You offering to make it? Bennett groaned. I'll set the table. They moved around the kitchen together, an improvised choreography of pancakes and eggs and setting plates. It felt strangely domestic, almost normal, despite the circumstances. As they ate, Sophie asked about the photographs on the shelves. That's Hope, Easton said, pointing to a picture of Bennett at age 7, grinning with missing front teeth. First day of 2nd grade. Hope? Sophie asked, confused. Bennett laughed. No, that's me. But Dad always says that picture gives him hope. Sophie smiled. Easton pointed to another frame. And that's Emily, my wife. Sophie studied the photo. A woman with warm eyes and laugh lines, standing in a garden with dirt on her knees and flowers in her hands. She's beautiful, Sophie said softly. She was, Easton agreed. Do you think she'd mind that we're here? Easton's throat tightened. No, she'd have insisted on it. After breakfast, Bennett convinced Sophie to help him build a blanket fort in the living room. Soon the space was transformed into a maze of sheets and cushions, filled with the sound of Bennett's running commentary and Sophie's tentative laughter. Easton watched from the doorway, coffee mug in hand. His phone buzzed. A text from Inspector Vega. No new developments. Holding pattern. How's the girl? Easton typed back. Stable. Safe. Another buzz. Keep it that way. He pocketed the phone and walked to the garage, pulling out the metal case. He opened it and removed the encrypted hard drive, connecting it to an old laptop he kept for situations like this. If he was going to find Lily Daniels, he needed information the police didn't have. The screen flickered to life. Old contacts. Names he hadn't thought about in years. People who operated in the spaces between legal and necessary. His finger hovered over one name. Alec Jennings. Former intelligence. Now a private contractor who specialized in extractions. If anyone could help track down a kidnapping crew, it was Alec. Easton hesitated. Calling Alec meant stepping fully back into the old world. No more pretending he was just a hardware store employee living a quiet life. But Sophie's face flashed in his mind. Her fear, her hope, her trust. He pressed dial. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Well, Easton Brooks. I thought you were dead. Not yet. Close enough. What's it been, 5 years? 6. Alec laughed, a sharp bark of sound. You calling for a reunion, or do you need something? I need information. Kidnapping case. Professional crew targeting a billionaire CEO. Alec whistled low. You don't mess around, do you? Can you help or not? Maybe. What's in it for me? The satisfaction of doing the right thing. Alec laughed again. You always were a terrible negotiator. Send me what you've got. I'll make some calls. Alec, this one matters. The humor dropped from Alec's voice. They all matter, Brooks. That's why we do this. The line went dead. Easton leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. He'd crossed a line. There was no going back now. From inside the house, he heard Sophie laugh, a genuine sound of joy cutting through the tension. It was the first time he'd heard her truly happy. And in that moment, Easton knew he'd made the right call. Whatever it took, whatever it cost, he was going to bring Lily Daniels home. The package arrived at 4:32 p.m., delivered by a courier who looked nervous and left before Easton could ask questions. No return address. Just his name written in block letters across plain brown paper. Easton carried it inside, his instincts already on high alert. He set it on the kitchen table and called to Bennett. Take Sophie upstairs, now. Bennett didn't argue. He grabbed Sophie's hand and led her up the stairs, casting one worried glance back. Easton examined the package carefully. No wires. No unusual weight distribution. He cut the tape slowly and opened the flaps. Inside was a single manila folder and a handwritten note on expensive stationery. The note read, "You deserve to know the truth. She does too." No signature. Easton opened the folder. The first document was a military service record. His own. Dates, deployments, commendations. Nothing he didn't already know. But the second document made his blood run cold. It was a mission brief, classified, date stamped 6 years ago. Operation Silent Guardian. Objective: provide covert protection detail for high-value civilian asset during international business negotiations in Vienna. Asset name: Lily Chen Daniels. Easton's hands went numb. He'd protected Lily Daniels. 6 years ago, when she was finalizing a major acquisition deal that made her enemies in several foreign governments. Easton's team had been assigned to keep her alive. She never knew they were there. That was the point. Shadow protection. Invisible until needed. The mission lasted 3 weeks. No incidents, no contact. They'd done their job and disappeared. Easton hadn't thought about it since. But now, staring at her name in black and white, memories flooded back. He remembered watching her through scopes and surveillance feeds. A woman who walked into boardrooms like she owned the world. Confident, unshakable. He remembered the one night things almost went wrong. An attempted hit in a hotel parking garage. 2 men with silenced weapons. Easton's team had neutralized the threat before Lily even knew she was in danger. She'd walked to her car, completely unaware that she'd been 30 seconds from death. Easton had watched from the shadows, heart pounding as she drove away. And then the mission ended. She lived. He moved on. But someone remembered. Someone knew. Easton flipped to the next page and found a photograph. Grainy, taken from a distance. It showed Easton in tactical gear, face partially obscured, standing in that same parking garage 6 years ago. Written across the bottom in red ink. The man who saved her life is the man who will save her again. Easton's jaw clenched. This wasn't a ransom. This wasn't random. Someone had orchestrated this entire situation to bring him and Lily back into each other's orbit. But why? He flipped to the final page. A letter, typed and precise. Mr. Brooks, you don't remember me, but I remember you. I was part of the logistics team for Operation Silent Guardian. I watched you work. I saw what you were capable of. When I learned that Lily Daniels had relocated to your city, I knew fate had aligned. She needs you now more than she did in Vienna. The people who took her are professionals, but so are you. You're the only one who can bring her home. The police will fail. The FBI will fail. But you won't, because you never do. Her daughter is counting on you. Lily is counting on you, even if she doesn't know it yet. Do what you do best, Brooks. Save her. Signed, a friend. Easton read the letter 3 times, his mind racing. Someone had been watching, planning, manipulating events. But to what end? He pulled out his phone and called Inspector Vega. Brooks, what? I need you to run a name. Lily Chen Daniels. Check for any flagged operations tied to her name from 6 years ago, specifically Vienna. Vega paused. Why? Just do it. 3 minutes later, Vega called back. Holy hell, Brooks. You were assigned to protect her? Yes. Does she know? No. It was covert. She was never supposed to know. Vega exhaled sharply. So this whole thing, the kidnapping, Sophie showing up in your city, this is connected? I don't know. But someone wants me involved. This is way beyond a simple ransom now. I know. What are you going to do? Easton looked toward the stairs, where Sophie and Bennett were hiding. I'm going to finish what I started 6 years ago. Brooks, if this is some kind of setup, then I'll deal with it. But right now, Lily Daniels is running out of time. He ended the call. Footsteps on the stairs. Sophie appeared, her face pale. I heard you on the phone, she said quietly. You said my mom's name. Easton hesitated. She deserved the truth. Come here, he said gently. Sophie walked over, and Easton showed her the mission brief, keeping the violent details obscured. 6 years ago, I was assigned to protect your mom during a business trip. She didn't know I was there. That was part of the job. But I kept her safe. Sophie's eyes widened. You knew her? Not personally. I was just doing my job. But you saved her life? Easton nodded. Once. In a parking garage. She never knew it happened. Sophie stared at the documents, her hands trembling. So this isn't random. You finding me, you helping us. It's like it was supposed to happen. Maybe. Tears filled Sophie's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were something else. Relief, hope, wonder. My mom always says things happen for a reason, Sophie whispered. I never believed her. But maybe she was right. Easton placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Whether it's fate or coincidence doesn't matter right now. What matters is getting her back. Sophie looked up at him, her voice fierce despite the tears. You have to save her. You have to. I will. Promise me. Easton met her eyes, seeing the same steel he'd seen in Lily Daniels all those years ago. I promise. Sophie threw her arms around him, holding tight. Easton closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the promise settle over him like armor. He'd saved Lily Daniels once without her ever knowing. This time she'd know. This time it was personal. Bennett appeared in the doorway, sensing the shift in the room. Dad, what's going on? Easton looked at his son. I need to make some calls. I need you to stay with Sophie. Keep the doors locked. Don't open them for anyone but me or Inspector Vega. Bennett straightened. Okay. I'm trusting you, Bennett. I know. I won't let you down. Easton nodded, then turned back to Sophie. Your mom is strong. She's been fighting this whole time, and now she's going to have help. Sophie wiped her eyes. When will you go? Soon. Will you bring her home? Easton's voice was steady, filled with quiet conviction. Yes. Because some promises were worth dying for, and this one he intended to keep. The call from Alec Jennings came at 11:47 p.m. Easton was in the garage, cleaning and reassembling the Glock, when his phone buzzed. He answered immediately. Talk to me. Alec's voice was clipped, professional. Found your crew, Eastern European Syndicate. They specialize in high-value extractions, very good at what they do. Location? That's the complicated part. They're moving her. 3 different safe houses in the past 48 hours. Classic misdirection. Easton's jaw tightened. Where is she now? Best intel suggests an industrial complex near Harlow Point. Old textile factory, abandoned for years. Perfect for keeping someone hidden. How reliable is the intel? 80%, maybe 85%. Not good enough. It's what I've got, Brooks. These guys are ghosts. The fact I found this much is a miracle. Easton processed quickly. What about their exit strategy? Private airstrip 40 miles north. My source says they're planning to move her out of the country tomorrow night. After that, she's gone. Tomorrow night. Less than 24 hours. Send me everything you have, Easton said. Already did. Check your encrypted email. And Brooks, these guys don't take prisoners. If you're going in, go hard. Copy that. The line went dead. Easton opened his laptop and pulled up the files Alex sent. Floor plans of the textile factory, satellite images, guard rotation schedules based on thermal readings. It was a fortress. Getting in would be difficult. Getting out with Lily alive would be nearly impossible. But impossible was what he'd trained for. A soft knock on the garage door made him spin, hand instinctively moving to the weapon. It's me, Sophie's voice came through. Easton relaxed and opened the door. Sophie stood there in oversized pajamas, holding a glass of water. Couldn't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. I heard you moving around. Are you leaving? Easton hesitated. He'd planned to slip out before dawn, leaving a note. Clean, simple, no goodbyes. But looking at Sophie's face, he knew she deserved better. Yes, he said quietly. I found where they're keeping your mom. Sophie's eyes widened. When are you going? Before sunrise. What if something happens to you? Easton knelt down to her level. Inspector Vega knows everything. If something goes wrong, she'll make sure you're taken care of. And Bennett will stay with you until this is over. That's not what I asked. Easton met her gaze. The fear there was real. But so was the strength. Nothing's going to happen to me, he said firmly. I've done this kind of thing before. I know what I'm doing. But you're going alone. I work better alone. Sophie's voice cracked. What if you don't come back? What if I lose both of you? Easton placed both hands on her shoulders. Sophie, listen to me. I made you a promise. I'm going to bring your mom home, and I'm going to come back. That's not hope. That's a guarantee. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You can't guarantee that. Watch me. Sophie threw her arms around his neck, holding tight. Please be careful. I will. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. My mom, she's really smart and brave. But she gets scared too. When you find her, tell her I'm okay. Tell her I'm safe. Tell her I love her. Easton's throat tightened. I'll tell her. Sophie nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. The wooden heart charm with the anchor that Jake had carved in the original story. Easton had made something similar for Bennett years ago. "Bennett gave this to me," Sophie said. "He said it's for luck, but I think you need it more." She pressed it into his palm. Easton looked down at the small charm, worn smooth from years of Bennett carrying it. "I'll bring it back," he said quietly. "You better." Sophie hugged him one more time, then walked back inside. Easton stood in the garage, the charm warm in his hand. He tucked it into his pocket, finished assembling his gear, and pulled up the factory floor plans one more time. Tomorrow, the men who took Lily Daniels would learn something important. Some people couldn't be threatened. Some people couldn't be warned off. And some people, when you pushed them hard enough, pushed back harder. Easton Brooks was one of those people. And he was done waiting. Dawn broke cold and gray as Easton loaded the last of his gear into the Tahoe. He moved with practiced efficiency, every motion precise, every item checked twice. Inside the house, Bennett sat at the kitchen table with Sophie, both picking at bowls of cereal neither wanted to eat. "He's really going, isn't he?" Sophie whispered. Bennett nodded. "Yeah, but he'll come back. He always does." "How do you know?" "Because he promised. And my dad doesn't break promises." Sophie stirred her cereal absently. "What if this time is different?" Bennett looked at her, his 12-year-old face suddenly older than it should be. "Then we'll deal with it. Together." The word hung in the air. Together. Sophie realized that somewhere over the past few days, she'd stopped feeling like a stranger in this house. Bennett wasn't just being nice to her. He genuinely cared. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not treating me like I'm broken." Bennett shrugged. "You're not broken. You're just going through something really hard. There's a difference." Sophie smiled despite everything. "You sound like your dad." "Good. He's pretty smart." The back door opened and Easton stepped in, dressed in dark tactical clothing, his face already shifting into the focused mask of someone preparing for combat. But when he saw them sitting there, something softened. "You two okay?" he asked. Bennett stood. "We're good, Dad. You need anything?" "Just you to keep your phone on. Inspector Vega's number is on the fridge. Anything weird happens, you call her immediately." "Got it." Easton turned to Sophie. "Your mom's strong. When I get there, she's going to fight like hell to get back to you. You know that, right?" Sophie nodded, eyes glistening. "I know." "Good." Easton glanced at his watch. "I need to move." Sophie stood abruptly and crossed the room, wrapping her arms around him. "Thank you for everything." Easton returned the embrace gently. "I'll see you soon, both of you." Bennett hugged his father next, holding on longer than usual. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, bud." Easton pulled back, looked at both of them one more time, then walked out. The sound of the Tahoe starting echoed through the quiet morning. Then the engine faded into the distance. Sophie and Bennett stood at the window, watching until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. "Now what?" Sophie asked. "Now we wait," Bennett said. "And we trust him." The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Bennett tried to distract Sophie with movies, card games, anything to keep her mind occupied. But every time a car drove past, she jumped. Every time the house creaked, she tensed. Around noon, Inspector Vega called to check in. "Everything secure?" she asked. "Yeah," Bennett answered, trying to sound confident. "We're good." "Your father left 2 hours ago. Radio silence until the operation's complete. That's protocol." I know. You're a brave kid, Bennett. Both of you are. Thanks, Inspector. After the call ended, Sophie looked at him. What did she mean? Radio silence. It means we won't hear from him until it's over. He can't risk communication during the extraction. So we just sit here? Yeah. Sophie sank onto the couch, pulling her knees to her chest. I hate waiting. Me too. Bennett sat beside her. For a while, they just existed in the quiet, two young people bound by circumstance and fear and something deeper. Can I ask you something? Sophie said eventually. Sure. After your mom died, how did you keep going? Bennett was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I didn't think about it. I just did. One day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. And my dad, he made sure I knew I wasn't alone. Do you still miss her? Every day, but it gets easier. Not because you forget, but because you learn how to carry it. Sophie leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm glad I met you. Even though everything is terrible, I'm glad you're here. Me too. They sat like that for a long time. Two kids who'd learned too young that life was fragile and unfair, but who were discovering something else too. That even in the darkest moments, you didn't have to face them alone. That family wasn't just blood. It was the people who showed up when everything fell apart. And it was the quiet promises made in living rooms while the world spun chaos outside. Together, they waited and hoped. The call came at 6:47 p.m. Bennett's phone lit up with Inspector Vega's number. He answered on the first ring, putting it on speaker so Sophie could hear. Inspector, it's over, Vega said, and both of them could hear the relief in her voice. Easton got her out. They're en route to Mercy General Hospital now. She's safe. Sophie's hands flew to her mouth, a sob of pure relief breaking free. Is she okay? Is she hurt? She's dehydrated and has some bruising, but she's going to be fine. The doctors want to keep her overnight for observation, but she's asking for you. Can I see her? I'm sending a unit to pick you both up right now. 10 minutes. The line went dead. Sophie stood frozen for a moment, unable to process that it was real, that her mother was alive, that Easton had actually done it. Then she started crying, the kind of tears that came from relief so profound it felt like breaking. Bennett hugged her, his own eyes wet. See? I told you he'd bring her back. He did, Sophie whispered. He really did. The patrol car arrived exactly 10 minutes later. 2 officers escorted them to the hospital, lights flashing but no sirens. The drive felt endless. When they finally arrived, Inspector Vega met them in the lobby. She's on the 4th floor, Vega said. Room 412. Easton's with her now. Sophie didn't wait. She ran for the elevator, Bennett and Vega following close behind. The elevator ride was torture, each floor ticking by too slowly. Finally, the doors opened. Sophie sprinted down the hallway, reading room numbers until she found 412. She burst through the door and stopped. Her mother sat propped up in the hospital bed, an IV in her arm, bruises darkening her face. But she was alive. She was awake, and she was smiling. Sophie, Lily Daniels whispered, her voice breaking. Sophie ran to her, and Lily wrapped her arms around her daughter, pulling her close. Both of them sobbed, holding each other like they'd never let go. I thought I lost you, Sophie cried. I thought they'd kill you. I know, baby, I know. But I'm here, I'm safe. Easton stood near the window, giving them space. His face was bruised, knuckles wrapped in gauze, exhaustion etched into every line, but his eyes were clear. Lily looked up at him over Sophie's shoulder, tears streaming down her face. You came for me. Easton nodded once. I made a promise. Sophie told the nurses what you did, how you kept her safe, how you risked everything. Lily's voice cracked. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Lily shook her head. Yes, I do. You saved my life. Again. Easton's eyebrows raised slightly. You remember Vienna? I didn't until today. One of the men who took me, he mentioned the parking garage, said I was lucky last time. It triggered something. I started remembering details, the way security changed that week, the man I saw in reflections who was never quite there. She paused. It was you, wasn't it? Yes. Lily's eyes filled with fresh tears. You've been protecting me for 6 years without me knowing. That was the job. And now? Easton met her gaze. Now it's personal. The weight of those words settled over the room. Inspector Vega cleared her throat from the doorway. The men who took you are in custody, all 4 of them. They're facing federal charges. You'll need to give a statement, but that can wait until tomorrow. Lily nodded, still holding Sophie. What happens now? Now you heal, Vega said, and we make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Bennett appeared in the doorway next to Vega, hanging back awkwardly. Easton waved him in. Bennett, this is Lily Daniels. Lily, my son Bennett. Lily smiled through her tears. Sophie told me all about you. Thank you for taking care of my daughter. Bennett shrugged, embarrassed. She's cool. It wasn't hard. Sophie pulled back from her mother, wiping her eyes. Mom, can Easton and Bennett stay, just for a little while? Lily looked at Easton, something unspoken passing between them. Gratitude, recognition, the beginning of something neither could name yet. Of course they can, Lily said softly. Easton pulled up a chair. Bennett sat on the windowsill. Sophie climbed carefully onto the bed beside her mother. And for the first time in days, the 4 of them simply existed together. Not as strangers, not as rescuer and rescued, but as people who'd survived something terrible and come out the other side. Together. 3 weeks later, the autumn sun painted Easton's backyard in shades of amber and gold. The leaves had begun their slow descent, carpeting the grass in russet and orange. Easton stood at the grill, flipping burgers with the focused attention he applied to everything. Bennett and Sophie sat at the picnic table, arguing good-naturedly about which superhero would win in a hypothetical fight. The back door opened and Lily stepped out, carrying a bowl of potato salad. She'd healed well. The bruises had faded to yellow shadows, and the haunted look in her eyes had softened into something closer to peace. Need help? She asked. Easton glanced over. I've got it. You're supposed to be resting. I've been resting for 3 weeks. I'm going stir-crazy. Lily set the bowl on the table and stood beside him, watching the burgers sizzle. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the past weeks. Dinners together, quiet conversations, building something neither rushed to define. Sophie seems happy, Lily said softly. She's a good kid. Because of you. She told me what you said to her, about being tough even when you're scared, about promises. Lily paused. She believes in you completely. The feeling's mutual. Lily turned to face him fully. Easton, I've been thinking. About what happens next. My company's been pushing me to return to the main office downtown. High security. Full detail. The works. Easton's jaw tightened slightly. Makes sense. But I don't want that life anymore. The constant pressure. The threats. Sophie deserved better. She deserves normal? What are you saying? Lily took a breath. I'm saying I want to stay here, in Westbrook. I want Sophie to finish the school year. I want her to have friends and stability and a life that doesn't revolve around security checkpoints. Easton flipped a burger, considering. That's a big change. I know. But the past few weeks, being here with you and Bennett, it's shown me what I've been missing. What Sophie's been missing. She paused. I can run my company remotely. The technology exists. I just never had a reason to use it before. And now you do? Lily met his eyes. Now I do. The weight of her words hung between them. Not a confession, not a demand. Just honest truth. Sophie would like that, Easton said carefully. Bennett too. They've gotten close. And you? Lily asked softly. What would you like? Easton set down the spatula and turned to face her fully. I spent 5 years building a quiet life, convincing myself I was done with complications, done with risk. And now I'm realizing that the things worth having are usually complicated. He paused. I'm not going to rush this, Lily. We've both been through too much. But I'd like to see where this goes. Lily smiled, genuine warmth in her eyes. So would I. From the table, Sophie called out, Are those burgers done yet? I'm starving. 2 minutes, Easton called back. Bennett laughed. You say that every time, and it's always more like 5. That's because I care about not giving you food poisoning. Fair point. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of pink and purple, the 4 of them sat around the picnic table. Conversation flowed easily. Laughter came naturally, and for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, it felt like home. After dinner, as Bennett and Sophie cleared plates, Lily reached across the table and took Easton's hand. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. For saving me twice, for protecting Sophie, for showing us both what family can look like. Easton squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do, because you changed our lives. You changed mine too. Later, as the stars began to emerge overhead, Sophie sat on the porch swing with Bennett, wrapped in one of Emily's old sweaters. Do you think they'll get together? Sophie asked. Your dad and my mom? Bennett shrugged. Maybe, eventually. They're both pretty careful people. Good. I don't want them to rush. Me neither. Sophie leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm glad your dad stopped that day. I'm glad he found us. Me too. Inside, Easton and Lily stood at the kitchen window, watching the kids on the swing. They look happy, Lily murmured. They are. So am I. Easton turned to her. Yeah? Yeah. Lily smiled. For the first time in years, I actually believe everything's going to be okay. Easton nodded, feeling the same truth settle in his own chest. Some stories began with screams, but this one, against all odds, was ending with hope. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.